Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from a lovely Saturday, quiet afternoon/evening where the streets have been calm and without the information van vehicles patrolling as they do so many Saturdays. And my guest can probably attest to this in his own experience. Oftentimes, rather than the texts and those mass alerts that we might get in the Western world, I believe in a number of African countries and cities that we often have information vans that patrol the neighborhoods to give the information that is necessary and pertinent. And so that is often a Saturday morning for us here. And we didn't have that today. I also didn't have the local church rehearsals going on, nor the gym across the road blasting their music. So it's been beautiful, guys. All great for the lab that I've been in all day working. So let's move on to what's pertinent to today. We have another Flashback Forward episode with a guest that was with us in our first year. And I'm so happy to have him back. He is such a dynamic leader and a fixture in the tech space, digital space here in Ghana, and increasingly across Africa. So let me get to his bio and we shall learn more about this Flashback Forward episode and this guest. He is widely known as Palm Wine DJ. My guest this week is a trailblazer in Ghana's music scene, a digital professional, social entrepreneur, and music curator dedicated to preserving and celebrating African musical heritage. With over a decade of experience working remotely and collaboratively with local, regional, and multinational partners, he's built a career that bridges the digital and physical worlds, creating impactful experiences through music networking and community building. Emmanuel Agbeko Gamor, welcome to the podcast, or welcome back to the podcast.
Yay. No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Florence. I always remind myself how much engaging with you sparks joy for me. And I think just meeting you, and between the 5 years, a half decade that you've been doing this, I'm really honored to be back. And each time that we meet, I'm really excited about the progress you've made with this podcast and other things. And it's humbling to be back on your podcast, and hello to your listeners as well.
Yay. Thank you so much. I mean, right. Half a decade feels like it's a quarter of a generation. So, I'm happy and many thanks for the kudos, because it's not an easy journey. And I think we all know as creatives what it means to be consistent and be in it. So I appreciate that. So let's get started. Let's go back, I think, refreshing our listeners' memories about you. Why don't you tell us where you're from, where you are local, and what is your craft?
Absolutely. I think every time you frame the question that way, it reminds me of the importance of Glocal citizens and this podcast. So born in Ghana and Kolebu, lived in the States, came of age in the States, and specifically Virginia, but then became an adult in Florida, moved back to Ghana, traveled and lived in Mauritius, studied again in South Africa, and then circling back a little bit more in Ghana, and having the privilege of traveling to 25 different countries now.
Ooh.
So I think, yeah, it's been fascinating to see. And then we have a big family reunion happening. And so having family members and me being reminded that, at least on my mother's side, part of my family is originally from Sierra Leone, on my dad, Nigeria, Togo, and having us all convene. So family that's moved on to live in the UK, those in the United States, and then South Africa. It's really exciting and also quite an experience. In terms of my craft, I think I've always talked about being digital. So starting from communications and marketing, and then really honing my craft to be digital transformation, digital intelligence, and working with big name tech. So Facebook, Google, YouTube, well, Facebook now Meta, and then MTN, one of the largest Pan-African telcos, and having the privilege to work on apps and digital experiences that affects millions of customers, both locally and across different countries on the continent, is a joy. And then the latest Palm Wine DJ and Palm Wine music that allows me to connect with first my dad, and then now the history of my grandfather, from crew people and music that predates our country's independence, and curating experiences that spark joy for me.
picking up on that, because we know a little bit about the digital, and we'll get to that experience. But I'm very curious about what exactly is, first of all, palm wine, and what is the genesis of palm wine music and how it has, translated itself into today's musical culture.
No, absolutely. I think most people hear palm wine and think of the beverage, especially those local. So even those in the diaspora, potentially your first interaction with palm wine is the sweet beverage. There's a version of it that's non-alcoholic and the other versions that are alcoholic, especially when it's fermented.
Right.
And those who drive up to Ibri or to different parts of Pimlico and Kumasi, it's a wonderful beverage to have. But really the music, palm wine music, comes or started off or originated from indigenous people combining Spanish guitars and to local, almost like handheld drums and rattle drums and traditional indigenous instruments, gome, koshka, and other things, and
Mhm.
having stories and narratives interwoven by usually a main singer, sometimes guitarist, main singer, accompaniment, and has transcended and grown and evolved as a music platform, heritage, original music from palm wine into high life, juju, Afro beats as you know it now,
Mhm.
hip life, and Afro reggae and other things with
Mm.
specific undertones. And so for me, it initially started off as a personal journey to call back the space and love that I share with my dad, celebrating 10th or his 10th year memorial a couple of years ago. So yes, last year was when I committed to this calling back of heritage music and engaging
Mm.
and discovering contemporary artists and bands that still hold on to the palm wine tradition. So Kwanpa, Jules has done a great album around it. SDC, Sodom Camp, Nigerians who also have pushed and continue to push. Chichiku, versatile
Mhm.
guitarist, who's
Mhm.
done some collaborations with Konimo, Ebo Taylor, and I had the honor of opening up for Ebo Taylor at the Aqua J party lit up last year, which was one of my adoring. And
Mm.
we're looking to do the same this year. And then it sparks a lot of joy for me to both celebrate, map out the invention in our traditional heritage music, and also to use DJ decks to create a collaborative experience. And when you listen to palm wine music, if those who are in a crowd who've been to Zen Gardens or have participated in Kwampa, and we had a concert together in December with Hayade, where I had the immense joy of emceeing, singing, dancing, call along with them. I'm also
Mhm.
recreating a similar thing, but now with DJ decks, where people who participate in the palm wine session can also bring their playlist along, can bring their hearts, minds, hands, and voices and collaborative sessions that are curated. So it's a lot of joy for me. And then it goes beyond just the music to, I mentioned the beverage, to snacks around that, and to even calabash, right? So the idea that a gourd becomes a holder of something that is nourishing. Calabash movement becomes this convening of people because there's a quote that says that while we're drinking, we're seeking wisdom, seeking counsel, we're innovating, we're sharing together. And so through the palm wine DJ music movement, I also have the Calabash Collective where we intentionally collaborate, hold each other up, and amplify our creative talents together. So that's what I've been doing with the palm wine movement and palm wine. And then it's been a lot of joy, both locally and also to allow me to open a window into my origin and answer the question where you're from. I said, well, why don't you let you into my palm wine experience abroad? And it's been really great. I've had a few sessions that have been sponsored by MasterCard with students across the continent, and it's been a reaffirming opportunity. And even for communities of DJs, it's always been like, oh my gosh, there's a whole genre. Keep doing this because it's refreshing to have new creatives who, in my space at least, introduce people to genres that they didn't know existed, hadn't heard of, but can resonate once they hear the elements.
Right. So you bring up so many thoughts in my mind, because when I think about a lot of the music nowadays, particularly the Afro beats movement, and before that, the hip life movement, and how it relates to the evolution of R&B soul, et cetera, with, all that music. We started, R&B soul was about instruments. And then we've had these weavings of different kinds of electronics and technology into the sound that is what is produced. And so Afrobeat is largely a lot, there's some Afrobeat was bands, right? That was the next after high life. That was the bands. That was, very musical, as you said, with the drums and the different guitars and the different indigenous instruments. Increasingly, we're not hearing, first of all, musicians playing in our contemporary music. So when you think about how contemporary musicians are relating to this idea of maybe using instruments or even knowing about instruments, what are your thoughts and where do you see the reentry? Because a bit of our history is that we lost a lot of the artistic, right? The artistic music generation during the Rawlings era because curfews and, different ways that I guess autocratic types of governments can control the ways of information moving and the ways of people kind of flourishing in different ways. Just tell us more. Tell us what your thoughts are on the instrumentation in this new way of thinking and what you think, how that might change or integrate itself into new movements.
Great question. I think for me, I try to map out experiences and progression of music and then try to also and as much as I like to call heritage in the past, honor the present and innovate for the future, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always been part of choirs. After college, I had a bass guitar and dabbled a bit in it. And for me, even the disco era of a lot of, you mentioned R&B and others, you think of so many great songs when the bass or bass reps were the innovation to start up and lead up songs, especially the groove of the bass, 4-string, 5-string, and. And then you would find almost like the electric sound or disco sound and synthesizers almost bending what would have been traditional piano and, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we're in an era where it's not live music, but because of digital instruments, it's the music producers. So they can pick up bass and bend it, traditional music and others in ways that speak to that. And I'm very open to that, the innovation of it and how it works. I think for me, what I'm always excited about is just because the elements and traditions of instruments have changed from maybe a keyboard, a whole ensemble of instruments to synthesis, laptops, and different tracks, we also must think of the enjoyment and emotional curation and participation as well. So how I map it out is my instruments would most likely be the different tracks I have in the DJ deck. And then for the palm wine experience, we can still have the handheld instruments and people playing along and participating along and joining in and be intentional that in the beginning, it probably was the initial European guitars and sing-along, and then indigenous band members added the gourmet, the hand drums, koshkas, and other things. And then bands like Osibisa and others fused that with British pop. And folks who are diaspora and like you and I, like Reggie Rockstone, fused that sound of high life with rap, right? So creating beat cadence with fast talking in a way that the staccato beat in itself lended to the harmony, right? So for me, I think there's some people who are purists, some people who enjoy certain eras of music. I think for me, I want to constantly bring the elements, the kente, the storytelling, the nuance of lyricism, the calling back of same themes that everybody has faced on the soil maybe 100 years ago and would face 100 years from now. And even if there's some modernization in it, just call back where it came from so that we do have nostalgia, but we're still able to experience these newly. So I don't have an apprehension to the way music is done or judge maybe if less is more in that way. I think for me, it's more future casting the essence, because when I do go to a disco setup or I do go to an EDM setup, even from the early beginning of EDM to what it is now, they're going to be experimentation. And even just rap concerts or drill, for example, there's experimentation, but you still have the elements of that so that there's a bit of creativity and feel for it. And for me, I'm always excited to bring the elements of palm wine, indigenous experience, affirmation, instruments that are earthy, that speak to almost like our creativity and minimalism. Even if there's some elements of new technology or new instruments, it's celebrating what we have, the tapestry and culture, and highlighting that even across newer instruments that still carry and catch that sound.
Great answer.
Thank you.
No, I really appreciate that. I tend to long for actual instruments. I too played, was musical. I played the trumpet and was in jazz band and band for many years. So I think that's where a lot of my heart lies in terms of wanting to love music, but I'm never opposed to beats. I like DJs, I like those. And so that brings me to kind of asking you a little bit about having spent time in Southern Africa or South Africa. We know that that's the land of Amapiano. And South African jazz is also very influential in the Pan African music scene. And so being there, spending a bit of time there, and also I feel like that you may have kind of flourished a little bit more as a DJ being in that space, because I won't say that I knew that you were as a DJ pre business school, pre there, but I feel like that was probably a huge influence on your evolution into this music space. So tell us a little bit about how you found that kinship in the South African musical scene, and even like some of the DJs that you have been influenced by and really are ones to watch.
Absolutely. I think my music journey is also influenced as much by my expertise in tech and need for
Mhm.
what's happening. So I get
Mhm.
to have almost like a window into what's happening as we adopt more infrastructure that allows us to have digital experiences. And then as more creatives want to have their voices heard across digital platforms, there's a wide open opportunity for some of these stories to be told, right? Not just the popular pop songs that make it on the charts, but also
Mhm.
alternative sounds that probably haven't been digitalized the same way, right? To hear some of these songs, the old tapes and others didn't make it into cassettes, they didn't make it into CDs, maybe some level of vinyl, but most of the OG palm wine music are probably on cassette tapes, not on
Yeah.
MP3s, right? So
Yeah.
there's a need for us to also almost progressively bring that sound into formats that are now easily accessible and scalable. And so
Mhm.
because of that digital need, a lot of people across those aisles are appreciative of Palm Wine, the projects I'm doing. And even for music producers and DJs, they're excited because I think in every field, there's a lot of competition, right? So for open house,
Mhm.
open format DJs, there's so many of them. For I'm a piano that has become a staple from South Africa to the rest of the world.
Mhm.
Some South Africans are like, well, it doesn't cover the myriad of genres. But then some people are also like, other DJs from other countries can carry them a piano sound, but it's not the same as where it's originated. So the usual
Yeah.
um, competition, alignment, open to collaboration, but it's always embraced when people know that you've picked a lane that is not popular. You've picked a lane that is empowering. You've picked a lane that they can hear something in it that's for them, but you've picked a lane that almost validates you because nobody can play more palm wine than somebody who's from West Africa where palm wine was born, right? So it's
Sure.
the same way how people feel like you can't out rap rappers from New York or Cali because that's the mecca of where rap came from. So for me, picking a genre that is an educational opportunity just checks off so many boxes for both digital, experiential. And then for me, I feel like because it's part of my DNA, even when I make mistakes in mixing, it's received in creative acceptance. And I think
Mm.
a
Mm.
lot of times other DJs, they kind of create a formula to judge because of high competition. Did you scratch well? What was your set like? Because it's not real hip hop or hip, whatever it is. And that causes a lot of what I would say not ability to receive the creative outputs of so many really amazing DJs, so many really amazing creatives. So I love the space that I'm in. I'm in my lane and I'm enjoying it. And I appreciate that it's being received for what it is.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so speaking of, I want to talk about a little bit of glocal speak. And that is a word, a phrase, or a saying that's a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you've come to value it as glocal speak. And to somehow potentially contextualize that a little bit, I'm interested in your glocal speak around your work in this digital space. Because you mentioned AI and being excited about that and things like that. And so I want to go into that a little bit in the conversation, but your local speak generally or in the context of digitalization of us peoples.
Yes, I think in AI, it's incredibly challenging. I think
Hmm.
what we're seeing now is almost like the inception of AI is buttressed by the funding and ability to experiment and grow, right? Like for
Mhm.
you to have AI scientists, you should have had a backlog of computer science folks who are specifically interested in machine learning, data learning,
Yeah.
analytics, prompt engineering.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like sequential. If you miss those steps and you're still at foundational,
Yeah.
trying to find who are the math folks and others, you're really not included. And that's the
Yeah.
truth, right? So there's no real local conversation to have with the co-create. We're not co-creating AI. We're almost waiting to be consumers and customers and or subjects of learning for AI.
Mm.
And so it's a shame. I think it's a big challenge. It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I feel like folks who are probably in the diaspora that are part of systems and teams that are building this, NVIDIA, Microsoft, AWS, Facebook, Claude, Grok, they're in a privileged position because AI is quite similar to the race to space, right? So the companies, the countries that had companies that align with national interests, a lot of the innovation from telecoms to electronics to batteries to sustainability, because we're able to fund really smart people on big ideas, these innovations were byproducts. So we don't have that. So there's a bit of a dissonance and disappointment, but I feel like all is not lost. Now on our end, we do realize that we're still part of the addressable market. So policy around AI is going to be big. If we can't participate in the manufacturing and establishing and funding of innovation in it, we should look at ethics and engagement and how we want to be recipients of AI, whether it's from product sell to customer experience, data collection to security to insights collection. We can determine as a continent, as a region, as a country, how then the rules of engagement happen. And through that, we can shape which parts of AI, one, that we're open to and which parts we don't want to affect the segments, especially our kids, young people, and growing adults. So for me, that's a clarity of mind in which I engage with AI being local, the global perspective. But to be fair, really, it looks like a lot of policy on AI are really from three big regional blocks: the European Union, the United States in manufacturing capacity and venture capital to fund the trillions of dollars in AI, and then China. And outside of that, if there's really a bit of white noise. No other
Mhm.
countries are really dictating. So
Yeah.
for us, I think it's important based on our population size and the potential that the rest of the world would see in Africa that we do articulate in which ways that we engage with AI. And I think even for the creative economy, right? It's the opportunity for folks who own rights to music and others, or can mimic indigenous or whatever music to ears that are not familiar and sell it as that is a big threat. And so being able to have our own archives and experience and
Yes.
advocates for
Yeah.
what foundational heritage music looks like is one of the steps to protect that and to make sure that, yes, what is AI, but what is also heritage and human made is kept that
Mm.
way and not just whitewashed. So exciting, difficult, dangerous, interesting, intriguing times ahead when you think about AI in the global context.
I love that answer because it has my mind in a few different places. Number one, the idea that you mentioned, when I first moved to back to Ghana, it was 2012, 2013, and I had gone to the first social media week in Lagos. And at that time, I had gone to social media week in New York prior to, and the big talk then was large language models. It was big data. That was the conversation. And then I come to Africa, to Nigeria, and the conversation that was not at all a part of the conversation. And right then I knew, I was like, wow, we are not in this plot right now, this is what the actual conversation is about, is how do we get as much data as possible so that we can serve more or know more or be more. Fast forward to now, we're still in that situation where we don't have as enough big data, and we are oftentimes still relying on those same organizations you mentioned to help us with what they have, and what they have is in the lens of who they are. So I love what you said about maybe where we start is with taking our archive first and foremost as the foundation of our own data systems, like taking that very seriously, because I believe that that is probably the most serious thing that we can start to do. And that helps us to uncover the stories that have been buried about us for so long in our Indigenous histories. But then the other part of what you're saying in terms of the policy, it gives me a little bit of pause and it makes me a little bit afraid because I think we have been across Africa challenged with implementing policy through our systems. And so we've, oftentimes just, taken what's been handed down to us. But I feel like this challenge of being able to write and own our own policies is a charge that is necessary and it's almost existential. And so I hear you on that. And so I wonder where your thoughts are on which kind of convening organizations or groups do you feel would be in the lead of that type of thing, having this experience working with the corporates, the big, telcos, et cetera, and then also being in these also policy conversations across Africa and the diaspora. What are your thoughts?
It is a loaded question because I feel it's a bit of a challenge to exclude anybody, right? Because the reason why that is happening is we recognized when you went to Social Media Week that every marketing campaign would need a digital interface or intersection, right? It's cheaper, it reaches out to people. And most people have predicted that successful businesses have to become tech business. You can't be a conventional manual paper you're just not in the game anymore. The world is a big oyster, we're interconnected. So based on those things, every almost like organization, government, business is going to be affected by AI because of process optimization, efficiencies, also automation, and obviously some sectors more rapidly and quickly than others, and some roles as well. But if you look now, there's no industry that does not have people working with a laptop. There's no space or community that doesn't have people with cell phones. And especially in our parts, we have 2 cell phones, not just one. Right. So we didn't manufacture it, didn't carry the software, but it permeates everywhere. So unfortunately for us, there's no guiding counsel that can speak to AI. I think what needs to happen is there has to be multi-stakeholder representation in healthcare and education and sports, local governments, that people have taken time to read up and understand the risks and potential of AI. So then they're advising and giving that at different levels. What's going to happen is because everybody's connected to the internet or interwebs or can create an app or download an app or give access to people, and we've not really created a great digital hygiene where people ask questions. Or read TNCs, the exposure is so large that one group of people can't hold the floodgates of that, right? So for me, the approach to this would be we do need AI. We need aggressive national AI enablement education program that picks people from different backgrounds that are interested, that are reading up, and that's it on local MCE, DCE council, government. That also set in strategy for businesses, because a lot of businesses may be looking at the early almost and it's wild because in the 80s and 90s, more in the 70s and 80s, tech companies figured out subscription models where at a low cost, they present and sell to you cost savings on others. And later on, they bleed you dry because of your dependency to a solution. And we're going to see the same thing with AI, like the subsidized thing for people to be able to have prompts and all of that. By the time people are made redundant and AI is embedded, you can't hire what people don't know.
Exactly.
So the reason why the question is a bit loaded is it's difficult to just pinpoint a police task force or a cyber task force or almost like a global health task force or a national group. We actually need to have across every sector and segment a state of emergency and allow people to understand that this is going to be rolled out so quickly, so immersively, that we need to be having checks and balances in every conversation where tech and AI is enabled and integrated.
Yes, that's it. You've said a lot there, and it's so meaningful. And so, wow. Okay, so turning the conversation a little bit more into that tech and into your experience and why you have a lot of this insight. Tell us about your work with MTN and with the app side and how that is giving you cross-border experience in Africa with the company. First of all, tell us more about MTN, because I think many people don't know about it, the My MTN app, and just kind of going into what that work looks like for you.
Absolutely. So MTN, South Africa-based company, an accountant discovered telco licenses that a bigger company, Jonic, had in their portfolio. And during the drive for almost like connectivity post-apartheid, decided to scale and almost get into telecom space. And over time, MTN has built an aggressive and incredibly successful business in
Mhm.
some countries, buying up already existing small telcos and scaling them up into competitors.
Mhm.
And then now over time, having offshoots, auxiliaries, and divisions from cell tower management to almost like additional enterprise businesses and I think the company is looking to move from a telco to a tech company because of what we discussed.
Yeah.
Part of it is connectivity has been very good and very profitable. So phones, cell phones, making phone calls and data. But now people in the world, it's not about data anymore. It's about services that you get to do on the data and connectivity.
Mm.
So MTN Ghana, from Ariba to Scancom to MTN Ghana, I reached out and joined as senior manager for digital channels, but also de facto digital transformation lead in the digital team. So we sit in consumer, but we interface with IT, we interface with S&D, we interface with home projects. S&D is sales and distribution, and we interface with a couple of divisions around digital transformation projects. And our initial strategy was to use apps in order to optimize access for people to our core products, bundles, airtime, some of our vast RMS, caller back ringtone, subscription service, manage some of their requests and other things, some high volume requests that they would potentially do in customer care, pen resets, and almost being able to manage their bundles and bundle subscriptions. But yes, I am leaving MTN. Usually it's a 2, 3 year engagement for
Okay.
me because I'm a
Mhm.
millennial and excitement, but also I signed up for the local OpCo and I'm looking because of how passionate I am with AI and how little investments we have around AI in Ghana. I'm trying to invest in my own career and be a bit more aggressive in the type of experiences I have in AI. South Africa and North Africa seem to be the two spaces where the conversations are moving a bit more forward. And so
Mm.
I'm making the leap to be able to continue to have the insight that I have beyond the current roles and responsibilities. So in terms of what I do at MTN, I manage 3 buckets of people, products, growth, user experience, and then they also manage larger teams, both vendors and permanent staff members. And the app is open to 25 to 29 million devices. We
Yeah.
currently have 4 million, about 4 million active users on the app, with about 1 million people every day constantly on it.
Mm.
So it's the largest use app that is managed by, run by Ghanaians by far. And also with net revenues of hundreds of millions, I can't be too specific. And it's by far the most profitable Ghanaian managed app on any of the stores.
Of course it is. Well, MTN was the first major player in the connectivity and tech space here for that went big. So to your point, as you described them, that makes a lot of sense.
Sure, sure, sure. People would think that the Momo
Mhm.
app, but the Momo app has been revamped recently, and we do have some Momo journeys. So we're doing, and I'm proud to say this, and shout out and love to all my Momo team members.
And Momo is mobile money, if you're
Well,
not
yeah, Momo
familiar.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. But we're doing 2x of what they do on my app, and so I'm handing over the app to them,
Wow.
knowing that the friendly competition, we did good. Of course, I know that over time, as they create more fintech, almost like features and others,
Products, yeah.
absolutely, that need for financial revenue and transactions would overtake what we've built. But very
Mhm.
proud to hold the fort and still be number one in multiple ways with the My MTN app.
Nice.
Just a
Okay.
fun
Mhm.
fact about that. Something that I picked up during my teaching time in Mauritius. I was blessed to teach 2 visually impaired students, and there was a lot of faith in my ability to engage and empathetically lead. And so I brought that to my MTN, and we created the first almost visually impaired standardized app. And it's in multiple stages, but I was able to leverage with a lot of creative innovation and whew, with a lot of almost like inertia to get the MyMTN app at least somewhat compatible with visually impaired tools and others, because with USSD it's very complicated for visually impaired
Yeah.
people to go
Yeah.
through that. And so at our annual general meeting this year, 2025, I was very appreciative and excited when shareholding members who are visually impaired publicly announced their appreciation for the direct influence of mine and my team's work, including hiring our first user experience design manager did, and at least bringing impact to a very useful tool. And then I hope that the legacy that I leave with the team, they'll continue to build on that for visual impairment and even just innovation that brings other people who may otherwise not be as engaged in digital moving forward.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Leading with the heart.
yes, indeed, indeed. And so thinking about leading and leading as being a leader in your career and moving, I'm curious about why the where. So why and how have you determined that East or South and North Africa, as opposed to East? Because, oftentimes Kenya, Tanzania, those regions seem to be also fast moving in Rwanda with tech and intelligence and with progress. So, and we already know South Africa has its lead. So tell us more about the decision or thoughts around moving more in that direction. What are the key pieces that are attracting you to those markets?
I think with East, I've visited for a few conferences, but with Southern Africa, I think the academic in me really got excited. And for me, I had a chance to engage. There was a wave of decolonized theoretical pieces and decolonized mindset, especially in commercial and management spaces. That was quite exciting for me to think of if we had to think through building blocks and others, and it didn't have the same influence that colonial examples had, whether it's from the British, the Dutch, Netherlands, and others, what could we build for ourselves, right? And I think only South Africa, because of recency to apartheid, because of constant struggle and thought process of really competent and smart people, could have that nuanced discussion in a way that both academia and commercial spaces could allow for growth and reimagination, right? So my engagement and love for that was, oh man, this is not just a great thought exercise. How do I show up both as a professional in for a Africa by Africa tech company, but also for us? So you would see things like on borrowing from some of the things that I learned from Doodles and Google, the MyMTN app, we've celebrated some special holidays, including Independence Day with a Ghana flag on the app. And that's been intentional and that's been for my team, right? So those kind of Easter egg, what are the relics that make us feel passionate about that? And having little things represent that. Most people who are leading products for either big tech or Pan-African companies, I don't think I haven't seen them connect the dots of indigenous representation that I felt was in my power and ability. And because of being in South Africa and saying, hey, this also matters. Your ability to say that this is my identity, that we have 11 national languages, that we were forged in this rainbow nation of constant interrogation of what it means in our difference, almost shapes and continues to shape partly palm wine for me and also professional thinking in other spaces for me as well. I think in East Africa, I haven't had the same opportunity or joy, but I've had other engagements that have been also enriching. But I think that has been the anchor for helping me almost be in South Africa. The ability for me to appreciate and want to stay uncomfortable in learning and then apply that discomfort for innovative solutions to make it more comfortable for others after me.
And you also mentioned North Africa. So I'm curious because I've had a guest from Tunisia and they're more on the creative side. I know that there's quite a bit, movement, Morocco in that region. So tell us about what you're seeing there in terms of your why.
I think that Marrakesh, Tunisia, I think there's an innovative spirit. And I engage more with them, specifically with my time in Global Shapers and with almost their tussle to try because there's a proximity to Europe that allows them to do what they're doing and economic benefit. And so North African countries do have a higher, almost like economic grade and proximity to better trade resources in terms than we do of the Sahara. My struggle a bit is I have to feel validated, and for Black and brown bodies,
yes,
that is important. And I haven't gotten that type of validation being in North African countries. And I think they'll figure their aspect out, but I'm in a space in my life where I don't have to negotiate who I am and how I move just because of where I am. So I choose to be in West Africa. I choose to be in East Africa and Southern Africa way more than I choose to be in North Africa. But I'm very excited to see some of the apps development, some of the startups, some of their ability for them to also quote unquote Africanize in their own way and within their culture and add to the ecosystem. I think there's quite a number of brilliant commercial devs, creatives that are coming from that side. And I look forward to collaborating even musically with some of those that would appreciate it. But I wouldn't permanently live there or
Got
invest
it.
as much of my time as I do.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I would echo that sentiment. And we have a long way to go to together. I think you
Oh,
kind of
100%.
you hit it on the nose. But yeah, I think where it's go where you're wanted is the first line of action. And then we take it from there, which gets me to thinking about mindset.
Mm.
So tell us about your mindset hack. How are you hacking your mindset these days? What do you do to break out?
Yeah, I think you said you go where you want it. I go where I'm celebrated. I think what I've realized is on a daily, life just hits everyone, right? Old, young, we lose family, we gain family and joys. And so the more of these, and I think I was sharing with a good friend of mine that the more of these good decisions we make, good for my heart, good for my mind, good for my soul, the more space and bandwidth I have to be generous and think and lead from the heart. And so
Yeah.
my hack is that. And sometimes even with work or engagement with corporates or big tech or telco, whatever it is, it may not always be, it may be a good decision for a time, but it may not be a consistent good decision. So my hack is to recognize that season, to discern and prepare for it, and then to be humble enough to disengage from it if it doesn't serve me.
Great one. It works. It works. Okay, so you kind of hinted at what's new and next for you. I want to ask you more so in the next 12 months, 12 to 24 months, where do you see yourself? Where do you see Palm Wine? Where do you see your tech world? Where do you see yourself in the next 12 to 24 months?
Definitely not working with MTN anymore and
Okay.
engaged more with AI, partly. So I also lecture and teach with Stellenbosch Business School. So I'm one of the foundational AI lecturers. So exploring AI in that space, exploring opportunity to teach and or engage more in policy around AI. Looking to collaborate with folks. I just looked that, once you're in big companies, you almost forget how much of an ally or amplifier it can be for other people. And so three big buckets come up immediately. Folks of friends of mine who've been playing around in the edtech space and how my competence can help them create personalized AI-enabled journeys for those trying to take tests. So professionals, ACA, all of that. I have a edtech startup, Kania Imali, and we're looking to have the Imali project be specifically toned or targeting women and girls because of how tech unfriendly it is to the other gender. A lot of guys just gravitate towards tech, and it looks like we've not figured out how to have the same equity in women in tech. And so in AI, how do we present it in a way that it's simple and women's voices can be heard? And so that sparks joy for me. So engaging with friends around that. Extension of what Palm Wine is doing, partnering with folks who've created avatars. So I have my own Snapchat avatar of Palm Wine DJ, investing in friends and their creative outputs so that there's a intersection of the creator economy and digital. Working with a few friends who work with almost like Samro. Samro's like South African music rights organizations and some of the local rights on the impact of AI on rights and music and teaching and my thoughts on AI and galvanizing people around that. So that's really cool. We might have a few videos around that. And the last one is a bit around human resources. So how do we empower people and engage with them with the right tools so they can be able to understand and continue to invest in themselves, even as we're having these big leaps that may leave people a bit redundant. Those are the big buckets for the first 12 months. And then I might just get into more marketing stuff, marketing good policy and how this generative AI influence our marketing agencies moving forward from the next 6 and 12 months beyond.
Yeah. So it kind of begs the question of me, you being in academia to some extent, or to a large extent, and having these different types of reach. Do you see, where would you bet that the African indigenous, let's say metas, as for thinking about who has the most data, where do you see that potentially being seeded and grown from as a market or as a place or as a sector, where do you see that potentially happening? Because I feel like that is the game changer that we're looking for. And I feel like you're hinting at it in these different sides and everything. Where does that happen? Because you mentioned also we don't make the phones, we don't do these. Where do we start our ground zero or ground 10, wherever we're entering on the elevator? Where do you see that potentially being?
It's a fascinating question. I don't know if I've thought of it the way you're asking it, because I think that when you think of innovation in AI in the past tense, you think of which country, which geolocation, and others. Because it's internet, it doesn't really have the barriers of which geolocation, right? And because we've had such a mismatch of development, in the past, you would probably say the most connected country that
Mm,
has power, but it's not that, right? Because South Africa, which technically one of the largest economies, robust and others, won't be able to keep the light on enough for you to have these data farms and AI at that level because they've had power outages. So it's hard for me to answer the question the way you're answering it. But if I think through it properly, like I don't think Rwanda has the same amount of power outages that South Africa has, but they don't
yeah,
have the industry and capacity to build anything close to what South Africa can because South Africa has manufacturing.
yeah,
So it's almost like there are parts of the continent that can
do
leverage,
certain things.
but
Mm.
it's not in one developed space to take the lead, right? So Nigeria has huge amounts of devs and dev culture and other things, but infrastructure wise, they're nowhere near being able to
Right,
sustain it,
right,
right? So,
right.
so I hear how you're asking the question, but it's a difficult one to
Yeah,
point
yeah,
into. It's
yeah.
an amalgamation of sorts. So I think what's going to
Mm.
look like it is a lot of people in digital before crypto and others were pushing for things like digital visas and potentially pushing for digital nomads and also almost like a recalibration of people who have work who are not bound by geographic location.
Yeah.
So maybe with AI, what's going to happen is self-organized specialties that because if you're in a space that you have enough backup and redundancy for access to light and all of that, and you build teams around that, it's the teams that can get funding and that can connect their products to utility and paying customers that would win. And it doesn't look like those in specific countries. It looks like self-organized, almost like cross-country collaboration.
Mm. Yeah, that's been the way I've been thinking about it, with the exception of increasingly, and I know, as you mentioned, that challenge. That's why I asked a deeper question about North Africa, because I have a sense that Morocco is a region or a space where you potentially have that infrastructure. You have the capacity to build this potentially non-fossil dependent energy sources and things like that. But as to your point, the industrial capacity may not be what South Africa has, et cetera. So I like how you're thinking about it. I mean, it's just something to think about. I'm always thinking, because at the end of the day, what's going on with these trade wars and, all of the age of wars, as I would call it, that we are now, and the leadership crises that we have, exactly how you described what is the difference of mindset that we need to now start to embrace about how do we do this? I feel like that's on the right track, most definitely. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Manuel. So we've talked about all this business and all this, future
Yep.
minded things. Let's get to the present.
Gotten dark.
I know, right?
I know you're so excited about it, but we need to wrap up.
Yeah, it's
We-
nighttime.
Yeah.
But we want to know, who is Emmanuel when he's not working and playing music and being in the lanes of innovation. Are you a reader? Are you a watcher? Are you a listener? And what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens? Or what else do you do when you are not in the throes of work?
Oh, I think because of how much I love this, it doesn't feel like work, right? So those are really
I
my
knew you were
big
going to say
things.
that.
Yeah, like I've committed a lot to it to be able to speak to how deep it is and have the impact that I do.
Yeah.
Outside of that is really sports and
Mm.
like spending time with my community. So I play basketball, I play tennis. Last year I was a player coach for the MTN Yellow Ballers, and we won our first ever corporate trophy and tournament.
Okay. What are
Obviously,
those? What are yellow ballers?
basketball, so corporate basketball
Yeah,
games.
yellow. Yeah, men team is yellow. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so as a coach player, it was great to inspire the team while playing and adding a bit more energy. This year, because I'm phasing out of the team, unfortunately, they have a 0-3 or 1-4 record. Um,
Oh,
so I like to feel like they need to find some of the spunk I brought into the winning ways. But no,
yeah.
I play soccer. I try to play tennis. I'm getting into golf a little bit just to keep the body as active as the mind wants to be. And then through palm wine, like it's not a hectic. Doing DJ sets. It's really being able to connect people and support other people.
Mhm.
I think we met at the last listening party of one of our favorite artists who's Ghanaian and diaspora as well, Mensa. And I
Mhm.
think those type of things, being able to support, pay for, be participatory, and some of those things spark a lot of joy for me. And I do that with friends and loved ones as often as I can.
That's a great way to be. All right. Well, it is dark.
Have you seen how dark it is? It's
Yes,
almost seven.
night has
Yes.
fallen. Exactly. The sun sets as opposed to the Western Hemisphere summer. In these parts, by 6:37, but before 7, the sun is set. So we are from evening into nighttime right now. And so as we put the sunset to rest, the moonrise into the conversation, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Not specifically. I think I've
Mhm.
also become humble not to share anything that
Mhm.
I think for most people, there's an almost like a panic or apprehension. Geopolitics, technology seems all breathing down your neck. We've moved from social media to AI, and you feel like you're being sold something. And I feel that the more of us who are grounded and appreciate what we have, appreciate who we're with, appreciate what we do, and make sure that the values that helped us feel validated and supported is what we passed on in your own small corner makes the world a better place. So maybe that's what I would share. I don't have
Yes.
anything prescriptive or
Yeah.
anything preachy to share, but I hope you are loved. I hope you love, and I hope that love finds all of us.
I
Thank
love that. Yes, thank you. We need that. We need more. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. So thank you so much, Emmanuel. It's been
thank
such
you.
a pleasure catching up with you.
Always a pleasure, Florence. Keep up the
Uh,
good work and love to all your
Thank
local
you.
fans out there and across the globe.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, local citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at localcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, share, subscribe, leave us a review. We love to hear from you. And it also helps others find great content like this on the internet. As always, our show notes will be very rich. Particularly, all that information about music will be in these show notes. If you didn't catch it, you'll be able to go back and look at it. And until next time. Bye for now.